Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Data Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Steve Mills. He's a Director of Data and Analytics at PwC. We're going to be talking about data strategy on this episode, and not just data strategy, but how that's been affected with everything going on in the world right now. And I think Steve is a really good position to do that, working at PwC and partnering with a number of different businesses and data leaders in the North as well. Should we start off just a bit of an intro to yourself, Steve, how you got into data, that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rich. So I guess I've done data 20 odd years now, of which 15 or so have been professional services. So I've been at PwC for coming up to 4 years now, based out of Manchester, leading the data and analytics function here in the North. Before that, I spent 12 years at IBM in the consulting division, working predominantly financial services, insurance, going through things like Solvency II, working on finance transformation programs, and then latterly working a little bit in the AI Watson space in their division there. And then before that, I was in industry. So I worked with the likes of Reuters, Visa, and Single Point, which is a subsidiary of Vodafone, cutting my teeth on data warehousing and ETL. So and then I came to professional services because I didn't want to keep changing jobs. I wanted that variety of working with loads of different clients, but under one sort of roof of one firm. So yeah, and here I find myself working in the North with a variety of different clients now across industries, with different challenges and issues and opportunities that data is at the forefront of that now. So it's a really exciting time to be in this space.
Yeah, 100%. And you're in a really good position to obviously shine a bit of a light on what's going on at the moment and what challenges people are facing and bits like that. So, I mean, what from your perspective, what have been the biggest changes, I suppose, in the last year or so for leaders?
Oh my God, what a question. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, it's if you come out of the data challenges and you look at what's been happening in the macroeconomic world, we've seen that we've had, recently we've now got a new president in the US. So Trump has moved on and Biden's in. So we've had disruption from that perspective. The Brexit situation has been extremely well documented. We've seen the whole situation of all the trucks that were stuck at the airfield over Christmas, and what was that going to do to supply chains, and how was that going to impact the ability for products to be on shelves, people to manage getting their goods out to market. You then come into the most commonly talked about topic over the last year, which is COVID, and that has had a massive disruption that no matter how well you are forecasting or preparing for your business and keeping operations going, no one would have seen that coming. So therefore, this time last year, everyone would have been carrying on as normal with a standard approach to your business model. And that impacts data as well. So no one would have predicted that we would have been in this position of, what do I need to do? How am I going to be nimble and agile to be able to move and adjust what I need to do in my business for that situation? And of course, the other thing that I think is wrapped around that is the digital transformation that we've seen as a result of COVID, that a lot of people had to have, moved very quickly to what we're doing here, talking on a Zoom call, or rolling out cloud to enable people to work at home, and then thinking, well, actually, where do I put my data? Where do I put my applications? So you kind of had these four forces over the last year that's impacted businesses and the general public, but behind the scenes, it's impacted data functions as well. So, it's those macro environments that had a massive impact on what's going on.
Exactly. It's not just one of those, it's all of those combined. And I think it's thrown plans out the window, but quite rightly, like you said, and a lot of what I'm seeing is actually it's sort of forced people's hand to kick on with certain projects that maybe were a little bit later in the pipeline. And that creates a lot of opportunity, and that creates a lot of, transformation programs, like you said, for sure.
Yeah. And I think if you just come down a level from those macro factors, and you start to go, well, actually, what's the impact on a data function within that? So any organization now has got a BI team or CDO office or a data team. And if you think, mentioned there about the impact on COVID, loads of organizations furloughed people last year. We know that's extremely well documented. we know that when the shock came in last spring, a lot of organizations stopped spending. CFOs insisted, because they needed to get a handle on what was going on in the business in a granular level of detail. So stop spending because we don't know what's going to happen. So suddenly you had data functions that said, well, hang on, I might have got rid of my contract workforce. And I might have been hugely reliant on that. And now I don't have half my team, 3/4 of my team that I had before to deliver what I had on my strategy and my roadmap. I've now not got the budget to do it because my transformation budget for my projects has been removed. So I've got no people, no budget. But then I've got the business going, I need this insight and I need it today to tell me what's going on in the market, on the supply chain, what's happening with my people. And I've got nobody to do it. So you're in this, you almost, data leaders have had straitjackets on at the beginning of this journey, or some of them. I'm painting a bleak picture, but there are some that are like that. People are in travel, transportation, hospitality. You're suddenly needing to provide the business with that insight, but I haven't got the tools or the people. Now, there is a flip side to that. And I think as we've come out of that shock period, we've seen people are starting to go, well, okay, it's in some respects, it's not as bad as all of that. And certainly in some industries, they boomed through the last shock. And therefore, then they're starting to do more with it. And we're seeing people that are moving to the cloud much, much quicker than they were before. So the ability to move their data onto the cloud and then continue with their transformation journey, but they're doing it in a slightly different way. And I think the whole way of doing it now is not all about a focus on a long-term strategy, but it's a combined view of what do I need to do to balance between giving the business what they need now to be nimble and agile to answer the questions they need to see, against how do I make sure I'm building for the future. So having a balancing that between the two.
That's it, right? They've got to survive first and foremost. A lot of businesses have got to survive, so that's the priority. But then it's keeping certain stakeholders happy. Then it's building for the future. I mean, has there ever been, from your history, has there ever been a tougher time for tech leaders in general where they had this many sort of factors, I suppose, affecting their role?
The only one that ever comes close would be the year 2000. And that was very different because you knew about that was known for 2 years in the run-up that, oh my God, what's going to happen to these systems when we tick over to the year 2000? Is it all still going to work? Whereas and everyone had that 2-year run-up to prepare for it. Here, you had no preparation. Suddenly the pandemic was upon us, and it was extreme. This is very different. Suddenly day to day, who would have predicted that suddenly toilet rolls were going to sell out last March or April? And what data do I need to know if I'm in retail or consumer products and I want to understand what's hot and going off the shelves and what's not? And normally you'd think about your trade promotions and what products am I putting on promotion at what point and for what price and in which supermarket, etc. People didn't need to do that last year because everything was flying off the shelves. So why would I need to promote anything? Why do I need to discount anything? So suddenly all your plans for what you discount off the table. I want to know what's selling hot and why. And suddenly you'd be going, why is toilet roll selling so quickly? And there was no rationale for it. It was not linked to anything. So no one would have predicted that. So suddenly the MI, the data, the insight people wanted was so different because I want to understand potentially, where are my people? Are my people well? At the beginning of lockdown, where is everybody? Is everybody okay? Are they where they should be? How do I manage working at home? So suddenly insights on the people side were key. Insights on your supply chain were key because I want to know what's where and am I being impacted from Brexit? Am I being impacted by how I get hold of things if warehouses are shut because of COVID? Thinking about finance, I want a better, more granular, up-to-date, more regular view on what's going on in the finance situation. Who are my bad debtors? Who's not paying the bills because they're worried about their cash flow? Because that whole situation will have changed. So all of this meant that whoever in the business wanted a better view on stuff. The digital director, who's on my website? Why is my website now hitting so many hits this year? Because everyone's at home and they're online shopping, and that's massively grown. So everybody in the business wants better insight and they want it quicker. So the impact on the data function was massive this time because you suddenly had such demand. And as I say, you might have lost half your team. You might have lost some of your budget, but the business want more from you.
Is that a common story then, and a common conversation you're having? And I suppose how are they dealing with that? Is it literally just all hands on deck and trying to get stuck in themselves? Are they finding different ways to outsource that piece of work? Are there cheaper options in terms of outsourcing, or?
Well, it's interesting. So all of that, which sounds like, oh my God, there's a lot going on, it's really busy, and your hands are tied and you can't do stuff. Um, what's really striking is the fact that so many organizations are making massive changes and really pushing on with the analytics functions. So we're seeing a number of different firms that are now saying, as I say, not taking the maybe the longer term, let me stand back and do a 3 to 6 month strategy to decide what I'm doing. I need to make some changes now because I need some of those insights that I talked about. So they're saying, I want to prove that I can make this difference. I want to be agile. I want to get going. So I want to roll out the cloud. I want to get going and answer some of these questions quickly. But I want to make sure that what I create is not throwaway. So I want to make sure it's part of something for the longer term. Now, the challenge is everybody starts in a different position, because depending on what my capability was at the start, depending on where the impact of COVID has had on my workforce, will decide what I can do. So have I got a nice all singing, all dancing cloud platform already? And have I got my data integrated? If so, I'm in a good starting position. Have I got my team, cloud engineers, visualization, data scientists? Have I got that team in place that allows me to be able to do that nimble insight with the business? Or I'm at the other extreme, where actually I do a lot of my reporting on Excel, and I rely on financial analysts, people to pull that data together in spreadsheets. And when they take it to the business go, well, that's interesting. Why is that number that number? Well, give me 3 days and I'll come back to you and I'll do a bit more analysis and tell you. So suddenly that end of the spectrum is going to be slower to respond to what's going on in the market, because they haven't got the analysis capabilities, the platform to do that. But some of those are going through that transformation and driving straight to the cloud, but starting with things like a proof of concept, a proof of value to get going that way. But as I say, ensuring that what they do in that space builds the blocks and the foundations for what they need in the longer term. So can I stand up cloud infrastructure? Can I think about what my data lake needs to look like and what data I want to bring in? And then from that data, what insight do I want to start with, but make sure that's not throwaway? And then how do I think about upskilling my team that I've got? And it might be, how do I retrain someone? What do I do from a graduate perspective? If I'm not allowed to hire, how do I think about that reskilling inside the firm? So we've seen people start from that perspective, and I think there's no theme around industry. We're seeing across industry, whether that's even in transportation, in logistics, clearly in some of the retail space, we're seeing it. It's a common theme over the last 9 months. A lot of people making that accelerated journey to adopt cloud analytics.
So, and yeah, really, really interesting point. And are there, I know you said there's no necessarily trends, but are there any industries that were particularly behind on this that have had to really accelerate off the back of what's gone on? See, I'm not too clued up on how advanced some of the logistics side of things were, for example, because that strikes me as maybe one of those that is still evolving, as opposed to like a retail or a finance industry that have tended to put a big focus on data in general.
Yeah, and it's a mixed bag in that space, because you can look at some of the retailers, and some of the retailers have got logistics parts of their business, or some of the consumer products companies. So within that, they end up owning the whole end-to-end supply chain. So some are more mature than others. You've got some that are just pure logistics and are fantastically great at what they do from an operational level, of being able to store something and move something from A to B and get the most value out of the asset that's moving the item from A to B. But maybe are not as mature in an analytical sense. So we are certainly seeing in that industry people looking to want to make that move from Excel, macro, basic MI to more advanced insights. So some have got such rich information on who's buying what and where they're delivering it to and how often they're buying certain things, that it's extremely valuable that they can monetize that and sell that on clearly in an aggregated way to people that want to understand, in a way that some of the folk like AC Nielsen or Kantar as a company sell data back to consumer products companies on insights on what's selling at supermarkets. It's the same for logistics firms. They could do exactly the same. But being able to adopt the more advanced analytics, be able to understand those trends, do that analysis, to be able to then send that back to or sell that back to manufacturers or consumer products companies. So there's definitely work that can be done in some elements of the logistics space. And it's not only about that side of things, it can be how to alter or optimize your operations. What do I do about my assets? How do I couple a driver with a truck on a certain job on a certain day? And how do I optimize the route mapping that I do? And how do I understand what's a good driver against a bad driver? All of that is data driven. So who's the driver that's got a lower MPG on their journey as opposed to another one? And how do I understand what the good driver looks like and make sure we get everybody to that level playing field?
It's putting a microscope under every part of the business, every link in the chain, to make sure that they can not only survive the period but continue to grow as well. And obviously it takes an upfront investment, but the businesses that, like you say, are already a bit more mature in this space will find this transition a lot easier by the sounds of it. I think also the point you made around, if they do go out and hire as well. So some businesses that are willing to invest in building out teams for cloud engineers and bits like that at the moment, it's just so difficult to find those individuals as well. And I mean, we see it a lot from the recruitment perspective, where actually, looking back on first lockdown, everything pretty much shut down. Businesses, like you say, were like stable. Let's just see where we're at. Let's figure out what to do. Beyond that point, in this lockdown, it's very much been, we know how to hire, we know how to onboard people remotely, let's go for it. And the difficulty specifically on the data side is some of the skill sets that they're after and the expertise they need to bring in just aren't out there yet. There's just not, the market's not as mature. So some of those businesses, their growth and their speed of rolling out these projects and delivering them might be stalled based on that. And I don't know, have you had similar conversations with them around this?
Well, I think so there are, I guess the other trend we are seeing is around people are considering what their center of excellence or their data function needs to look like, and how do I deliver these things that I'm looking at in terms of who owns the data agenda internally, but then where do I get my technical delivery capability from? Because there's no point in signing up saying we're going to do a data program if you haven't got clarity over how it's going to work and where I'm going to get my resources from. Yeah. And I think people are much more aware now that the data is absolutely key, and what you can't afford to do is outsource all of it and then find you haven't got the know-how or the knowledge on your data assets. So you can't, I think it's very risky to outsource everything to someone now. I think that said, to get going, I think a lot of firms are looking at external support to help guide on whether it's architecture, the strategy, or even the first phase of implementation. But everyone is very, very clear. We want to make sure that we're self-sustaining going forward. It's our data asset. We need to make sure we own that going forward. And how can you help us to get towards that position? But you're right, in the skills in the marketplace, because everybody's going this way. I mean, I see it in the north. You see a lot of firms have been on this cloud journey, and there's a lot of people, certainly in the northwest, that have gone from firm to firm. And you could name 2 or 3 or 4 firms, and you know that they're going between them because it's quite a closed community. Everybody knows what people are up to, and they know who's got what technology, and therefore, and there's only a finite number of people that are doing this stuff.
Yeah.
So actually, you haven't got enough people in the marketplace to fulfill that. And I know of others that have got projects up and coming, and they haven't got enough people. So where's that coming from? So hence why there's a permanent marketplace, a contract marketplace, and then a third-party support piece, which will just continue. But everyone's seeing it. There aren't enough skills, whether it's Google, Microsoft, or Amazon, to keep this going at the moment. It's just the pace of the market is ahead of the skills that are out there.
Yeah, 100%. And what do you feel are some of the other, I suppose, building blocks to that sort of modern data strategy off the back of all this?
Well, so I think, there's a series of building blocks in here. I mean, clearly there's the architecture. So you've got to make sure that you select the right architecture you need. We've just mentioned the 3 main cloud providers in there, which is common. And certainly in the market and the segment I'm playing in, I see mostly it's Microsoft Azure. There are a few that are a few that are using Google. Yep. But the majority of the market we're in are in the Azure space. I think if you look outside of that, I think you can't take your eye off the privacy and governance space, because if you're going to start to go to the cloud and you're going to start to bring that data in, you need to make sure that you're confident that that data is secure, governed in the right way, and the right people have got the right access to that data. So that is certainly, people are becoming much more cognizant of that. So your DPO is getting involved in the conversations around that protection of data and making sure, as I say, the right users got the right access to it, that the cloud environment is secure in the way that it should be. Now, clearly the upside is that Microsoft, Amazon, Google have spent billions on securing these platforms, which is brilliant because it means that you don't have to spend a lot of money securing your own platform because they've done a lot of that for you. So there are upsides of that. But then within the boundaries of protecting the environment, you've got to make sure your data is governed and kept to the right quality. So you're making right decisions on right quality data. And that's really, it's the dry end of the data spectrum. So, but it's really important. You've got to make sure your data quality is right. You've got to make sure that you're engaged with the business, because it's the business's data at the end of the day. Traditionally, people go, that's an IT issue. IT can deal with that. Well, that's not the case. It's your data. You're in the business. Yeah. It's your ERP system, your workforce solution, your sales solution. IT provide the foundation and the capability, but you own the data. So it's up to you to maintain that. Now, the problem then is how to tell the business or support the business to realize that they need to own their data. And the more they own their data and maintain it, the better it's going to be for them. So there's a real business change element in here. So across the adoption of new analytics, getting your right data governance in place, getting that business change is absolutely key. So making sure the business are on that journey with you and that they can see the benefits of what you're trying to do. So there's a very set of building blocks. And as I said, we mentioned before about the people side and the skills around that, making sure you can build that. So it's not an overnight thing, but you've got to start somewhere, which is why we're seeing it's very easy to get the cloud up and running and get a subscription in place in no time at all. That's the easy bit. Integrating that with your source systems is easy-ish again. But then the challenge is, what is it we're going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to do it to good quality, and who's going to do it? So building blocks. And again, back to the point of everyone's in a different starting position. So what team have I got? What engagement have I got with the business? How good is my data? And what platform am I going to use? So depending on where you start from will have an impact of how quick you can respond, how quick you can get out there with your analytics, and how good it is.
Yeah, and if hindsight being really important, hindsight being 2020, these people would have had those teams in place and being able to adapt so quickly. But like you said, it took everyone by surprise, and some of these things that they were looking to do more long term have now really accelerated, which is also exciting at the same time. And there's lots of opportunity, and it's great that businesses are going to be moving forward, probably at an accelerated rate off the back of this. But I mean, just looking forward now then, I suppose, what do you see throughout the rest of this year and going forward? Are there any other key projects or I suppose key considerations that businesses are going to have?
Well, I mean, I think it's been a really fast start to the year. We're only a few weeks in, and it's been phenomenal.
It doesn't feel like that.
No. So I think it's I can't see that doing anything but continuing, because I think so many firms are accelerating in this space and will continue this year and realize they can do that. So I think we'll see the trend continue. I think we'll start to see the maturity level increase. And I think once people are, comfortable with their core MI, let's call it that, I think we'll start to see some more experimentation go on. So we might see that move from cloud-based MI into the advanced analytics and the data science. A lot of what we're seeing at the moment is, as I say, getting the cloud platform up and running and core MI visualization to run your business, monitor, manage your business rather than then exploit it. So I would like to, and maybe it's my personal view, I'd like to see it move forward into more advanced uses of the data. So how I start to bring the external data in, how I start to do some analysis and correlation checking between different data sets to prove a point and look more forward rather than looking backwards. But it makes absolute sense why people are looking backwards and looking now at what they're doing. But I would think then you've got that foundation to start to go, what do I do next? How do I look forward and start to predict what's going to be needed in the new world? Of course, predicting at the moment is really difficult because you don't know. We don't even know when we're coming out of lockdown in 2, 3, 4 months' time. So if you're a travel company, how do you predict who's going to be on your plane? How do you predict who's going to be in your hotel or your resort at what point? It's really difficult because you don't know. So I think once we've got a bit more certainty, then people can start to do that. But this whole sort of 12, 15 months worth of data, if you started to try and model based on historical trends, I think there'll be quite a few people that would not use this period of time as a baseline because it's unpredictable and it's not normal situation. So it's a really difficult one to then start to go into prediction of what's happening.
I suppose a lot of businesses will use this whole period as a real learning experience and try and prepare for the sort of unpredictable nature of what can happen moving forward, maybe more so than they did before, knowing how close some of them maybe have come to having to close down or it's stunting their growth as well. But yeah, interesting that you say that could be the next step of it, I suppose, is investing in that, those data scientists to come in and do the predictive analytics and try and dig into that data as well. But initially it's actually getting it in the right place, making it available. That sort of thing.
I mean, so we talked about skills, and if we say that the cloud and the engineering space is a bit light on skills, look at data scientists. One, there's the salary challenge, but two, there's the level of people that are actually out there that have got the experience. So yes, that's increasing and it's improving and it's much better than it was 4 or 5 years ago. But excuse me, it will still take time. And I think we're seeing at the moment companies are saying, well, I've got to build my data lake, and once I'm comfortable with that and I'm doing my insight, then I'm going to move to doing more advanced insights on the back of that. So I think. That said, that's not always the case. We're working with a transportation company who are, looking to move forward very quickly with the data science lab and do test and learns very quickly in an agile route. Now, this is a company who's never used agile, never used data science before, hasn't really got strong data capability, but was very much, I'm going to use this period when it's quieter and we know that it's less busy for us to start experimenting. We know that actually we've got this quiet period now that we can get this function up and running that can impact our operations, whether that's looking at workforce shortages, delays on the travel network, whether it's on optimization of assets and food, avoiding wastage, etc. Being able to start to look at that in a way that they never did before, because they never did it with data. They haven't had that ability. Now they've had the chance to pause and stand back. They're able to then say, well, actually, you know what, let's build that and let's have that in place for when things are back and normal. And we've got a head start. I think something similar happened in the financial crisis where one of the airlines, I think, invested massively, it's a slightly different scale, but invested massively in the new Airbus because they got a much better deal. They came out of the financial crisis with nice new shiny fleet and they're in a much better position. So sometimes if you do invest in that situation, and if your people are quiet, why not? So we are seeing some people that are taking that leap from nothing to data science, and it will be interesting to see how they get on. But just to use it for their advantage when normality returns.
Setting himself up for the future, and it's not everyone's in a position to do it, but the ones that can and sees that opportunity could be in a great position in the coming sort of months and years as well. So no, that's really good. It's been really good speaking to you, Steve, around this. I think it's there's been a lot of change. I think it is an incredibly tough time for technical leaders at the moment, but fingers crossed, we're coming towards some sort of normality where we can start to get back to where we were. But at the same time, it's forced, a lot of businesses, like I said, to adapt and evolve. And actually, a lot of that all of it will be for the good, and will set business up to be more efficient, more explore new avenues, all this type of thing. So it's going to be interesting to how things go. But yeah, I really appreciate your time, Steve. It's been great speaking to you today. Maybe it will be good to have a follow up on this in future and see how much of this is how it's turned out, I suppose.
Well, absolutely. Who knows where we'll be in 12 months' time? So we did this 12 months ago. We wouldn't have been talking about all of this, would we? So who
Exactly
knows?
that. It's probably more how businesses should be doing this sort of thing, but still we're hesitant or something like that. But no, really good speaking to you, Steve. And yeah, we'll leave it there.
Cool.